My name is Chauntae Davies, and I'm here before you today as a survivor of decades of pain, trauma, and betrayal at the hands of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. He abused not only me, but countless others, and everyone seemed to look away. The truth is, Epstein had a free pass. He bragged about his powerful friends, including our current president, Donald Trump.
President Donald J. Trump. I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax. We are real human beings. This is real trauma.
Epstein's reach went to the very top of fashion, arts, and entertainment. This did not just happen to underage girls in Florida. In New York City, hundreds of young, ambitious women were abused by him. Epstein was not just a serial predator, he was an international human trafficker. And many around him knew, many participated, and many profited. And also, I would like to announce here today, us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know, who were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors. No one else is involved. Stay tuned for more details.
We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. That's what Lisa Phillips said, one of the women who lived through it. One of the women still standing. They were promised justice, promised exposure, promised a system that would name the powerful and protect the wounded, but instead sealed files, redacted pages, excuses. The government says there is no list. The Department of Justice says it doesn't exist. Nothing to see here, nothing to hide. But the survivors disagree. They say they've had enough. They say if the government won't name them, they will. Tonight, who holds the truth? And who is still hiding behind it? Jeffrey Epstein is dead, but what he built, what protected him, that still breathes. For years, his name was a whisper in courtrooms, a redacted line in sealed documents, a ghost in flight logs, until it wasn't. The scandal broke open, the arrests came, but the truth, it stayed buried. Survivors spoke, investigations stalled, names disappeared, and now, in September of 2025, something has changed. Survivors are done waiting. They say if the government won't release the list, they will make one of their own. Not rumors, not speculation. A list of names compiled from memory, testimony, and pain. Names they say the system has refused to say out loud. The Department of Justice now claims no such list exists. No client list in the files. No record to release, only gaps. But those gaps, they're filled with people. People who remember. People who survived. And the survivors? They are not asking anymore. They're naming. Because silence has protected power for too long. And now, that silence is breaking. This is where the reckoning begins. Here's Section 6, Victim-Centered Segment, delivered solely in the narrator's voice, empathetic, respectful, and grounded in the humanity of the survivors. Behind every name, every redaction, every blurred photo, there is a person, a life changed forever. Lisa Phillips was just a teenager when she was taken to Epstein's private island. She was told it was for a photo shoot, a chance for a better future. Instead, it became a nightmare she carries every day. Chauntae Davies speaks openly about decades of trauma, how betrayal by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell fractured her trust, her family, her sense of safety. Her story is one of survival, but also deep, ongoing pain. Haley Robson knows what it feels like to be dismissed, to hear the case called a hoax by those who refuse to believe. For her and many others, the battle isn't just against abusers, it's against disbelief itself. Liz Stein was young when introduced to Epstein's circle by Maxwell. She does not support mass public naming without care, but she calls for solidarity, investigation, and respect. She reminds us that survivors seek justice, not spectacle. Many survivors live with the invisible wounds of trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, shame, fear, distrust of institutions that promise protection but often failed. Distrust of institutions that promise protection but often failed. Public naming is a double-edged sword. It can validate their truth, but it can also re-traumatize, expose them to backlash, and fuel media exploitation. This is called secondary victimization, when survivors are treated not as people seeking justice, but as suspects, or worse, as public entertainment. And survivors face a painful tension: the need for truth and accountability versus the need for safety and healing. They must decide how much to reveal and how much to protect themselves. For many, creating a survivor's list confidential, careful, partial is more than just a document. It is an act of reclaiming their narrative, a way to hold memory together, to find solidarity in shared experience, a refusal to be silenced or erased any longer. These aren't just names on a page, they are women with stories, pain, resilience, and courage, not victims in a vault, but survivors demanding to be heard. This case has long been a magnet for conspiracy theory stories that range from plausible to downright unfounded. Some claim Jeffrey Epstein kept a secret ledger, a so-called beautiful child list cataloging every client, every name. Others allege powerful figures were filmed or recorded during abuse, with those tapes used for blackmail. And many believe the government is actively suppressing the real list to protect elites. But what do the facts say? The Department of Justice and FBI have publicly stated they found no such client list in their files. Reputable news organizations, The Washington Post, AP News confirmed this. No verified ledger, no master black book, no smoking gun has been produced. Survivors themselves acknowledge the complexity. While they speak about compiling their own list, they emphasize the importance of careful consideration. Not every name can or should be released without evidence. The risk of harm, legal and personal, is very real. The recent documents handed to the House Oversight Committee are extensive calendars, call logs, financial ledgers, but they are not a tidy list of perpetrators. They are fragmented records, often missing context. It's also crucial to understand the difference between association and criminal participation. Just because someone appears in a flight log or a calendar entry or was known to Epstein does not mean they committed a crime. This distinction is vital to avoid false accusations and protect the innocent. Rumors thrive in the absence of information, but true justice demands facts, not speculation. In this case, the pursuit of truth must be grounded in verified evidence, respecting survivors, protecting due process, and demanding accountability where it exists. Jeffrey Epstein, a financier, a convicted sex offender, a man who built an empire of influence and predation, he died in a New York jail cell in 2019. Before a full trial could expose the network around him. To many survivors, his death felt like a door slamming shut on the truth. Ghislaine Maxwell, his closest associate, the recruiter, the fixer, convicted in 2021 for aiding Epstein's trafficking operation. She is serving time, still appealing her case, still a symbol of how little the wider network has faced justice. Then the survivors: Lisa Phillips, Chauntae Davies, Haley Robson, Liz Stein, Anuska DiGiorgio, women whose faces and voices have become public not for fame, but for survival. They stood before cameras in September 2025 and said, "We are compiling our own list." Brad Edwards and Brittany Henderson, the lawyers who have guided these survivors through years of lawsuits, press conferences, and threats, they speak openly about the danger, the defamation suits, the retaliation that could follow if names are spoken without institutional backing. On Capitol Hill, Representative Thomas Massie, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, lawmakers who have publicly offered to read names into the congressional record if survivors hand them over, a political gamble in a polarized time. And in the institutions of power, the Department of Justice, the FBI, and Attorney General Pam Bondi, who once implied a list was on her desk and later watched the government deny its existence, agencies and officials whose statements, decisions, and redactions have become part of the story and part of the frustration. These are the names circling one another now: predators, enablers, survivors, lawyers, politicians, and institutions, all orbiting a single question: who will speak the names first? It began long before the world was watching. Early 2000s to 2019, Jeffrey Epstein built a life of luxury funded by mysterious wealth, protected by powerful friends. But behind the private jets and island estates, a trafficking operation was quietly expanding. Girls, some as young as 14, were recruited, abused, and silenced. When allegations surfaced, his lawyers made them disappear. In 2008, he struck a secret plea deal in Florida, 13 months in a county jail, most of it spent on work release. He left with a record, but kept his passport, his mansion, his network, and the abuse continued. June 2019, federal agents arrested Epstein at a New Jersey airport. This time, the charges were different: sex trafficking of minors across state lines. He was held without bail. Prosecutors promised a full investigation. August 10, 2019, Epstein was found dead in his Manhattan jail cell. The official ruling: suicide. The public reaction: disbelief. 2021, Ghislaine Maxwell stood trial. Survivors testified. She was convicted of trafficking and conspiracy, but even then no names were revealed. The documents stayed sealed, the clients unnamed. 2022 to 2024, leaks began to trickle out: flight logs, calendars, lawsuit settlements. Every new scrap of information fueled public outrage and conspiracy theories: who flew on the planes, who visited the island, who was protected. Early 2005, Attorney General Pam Bondi told reporters a list of Epstein's clients was sitting on her desk. Her words set off a political firestorm: demands for transparency, threats of subpoenas, and then silence. July 2005, the Department of Justice issued a formal statement. There is no client list, they said. Nothing to release. No such document exists in the federal files. September 3, 2005, the survivors spoke. At a press conference in Washington, D.C., 5 women stood before cameras and said, "We know the names, and we will no longer wait for the government to say them." They called it the survivors list. They said it would be based on memory, testimony, and what they endured. They said redactions had become protection, not privacy. Late September 2005, new records arrived: unredacted calendars, financial ledgers, call logs delivered from the Epstein estate to the House Oversight Committee. No public release yet, but lawmakers are reviewing them behind closed doors. That's where we are now: decades of crimes, years of silence, and the first public shift in who gets to speak. Not just prosecutors, not just politicians, but the women who were there. The truth didn't just disappear. It was hidden piece by piece behind sealed files, courtroom orders, and political silence. For years, Epstein-related documents have remained sealed or redacted, entire case files censored in black ink. The rationale: victim privacy. But many of the victims say they never asked for secrecy. What they asked for was justice. And when questions emerged about who Epstein served, who paid, who participated, who enabled, the public was told to wait. In early 2025, Attorney General Pam Bondi claimed there was a list. She said it was real, that it was on her desk. But just months later, the Department of Justice reversed course. No such list exists, they said. How does a list go from confirmed to denied? Was it political misdirection, miscommunication, or something more deliberate? Jeffrey Epstein did not exist in a vacuum. He cultivated influence and he bragged about it. Presidents, prime ministers, royalty, CEOs, attorneys, journalists, names now whispered in corners of the internet, but still absent from court transcripts. This is what institutional capture looks like: when someone is so protected, so networked that the system forgets how to prosecute them. Survivors say Epstein used those relationships to intimidate, silence, isolate, not just with money, but with immunity. And then there's the legal risk. Many survivors have said plainly, naming names could get them sued. It's called defamation when someone's reputation is harmed by a false claim. That's the threat. Tell the truth and lose everything. Then there are sealed documents, court orders that keep files hidden from public view, originally designed to protect victims, but now often used to shield institutions from accountability, and gag orders, legal agreements that bar survivors, witnesses, or lawyers from speaking publicly. So what the public sees are fragments, sanitized versions of testimony, documents stripped of names, and press conferences full of questions no one is allowed to answer. The 2008 plea deal in Florida, that non-prosecution agreement Epstein received, it didn't just let him walk. It protected unnamed co-conspirators from future charges. It was a blueprint for erasure. Even in 2025, when Congress released documents from the Epstein estate, much of it had already been seen. The new pages, still missing names, still missing truth. This isn't just failure, it's architecture, a system designed to close ranks when the names get too powerful. In the tangled aftermath of Epstein's crimes, the courtroom has become a battleground of its own. Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction in 2021 marked a rare moment of criminal accountability. She was found guilty of recruiting and trafficking minors for Epstein, but her legal fight is far from over. Her appeals are ongoing, a reminder that justice can be slow and uncertain. Meanwhile, survivors have sought civil justice. Lawsuits against Epstein's estate, Maxwell, and others in his orbit have resulted in settlements, but many of those agreements come with confidentiality clauses silencing victims again, this time in legal language, non-disclosure terms that protect names, hide facts, and prevent survivors from speaking openly. In July 2025, the Department of Justice released a memorandum. It stated clearly, no client list exists within their files. This official denial contradicts earlier public statements and raises questions about transparency and accountability. Congress has stepped in, trying to pierce the veil of secrecy. The House Oversight Committee has subpoenaed records from Epstein's estate documents they hope will finally shed light on names, dates, and transactions. Some lawmakers push further, proposing legislation that would require agencies to publish Epstein-related files, balancing privacy with public interest. But the legal terrain is dangerous. Survivors or politicians who name names without solid legal backing risk defamation lawsuits, a serious threat that could silence voices through fear and costly court battles. Much of the evidence remains sealed. Court orders, gag provisions, and redactions keep crucial information locked away. This legal censorship slows the search for truth and protection. And even if names come forward, some crimes may be beyond prosecution. The statute of limitations laws that set deadlines for filing charges may have expired, or prosecutors may exercise discretion, choosing not to pursue cases with weak or old evidence. The legal fallout is a maze, a place where justice, secrecy, and power collide, where the survivors' fight continues, not just for truth, but for a system willing to see it. As of late 2025, the Department of Justice stands firm. It says no client list exists in the Epstein files. Survivors, however, continue pressing for transparency, determined to compile their own list despite the risks involved. Congress has received new batches of documents from Epstein's estate, calendars, financial ledgers, phone logs, which may be released, though heavily redacted. Political pressure is mounting. Bipartisan proposals seek to force full disclosure, yet much remains locked behind legal and institutional walls. Ghislaine Maxwell's case remains under appeal, and many survivors continue their advocacy, demanding legislative action and renewed prosecutorial will. Public attention is intense. Social media buzz, news debates, political posturing, But for many, recent disclosures feel symbolic, insufficient to deliver true justice. The fight is far from over. The pressure is building. When survivors feel compelled to name perpetrators themselves, it exposes a profound failure. The very institutions designed to investigate, protect, and hold abusers accountable have been compromised or constrained. Transparency is essential. A system that seals documents, redacts truths, or delays disclosures erodes public trust. Selective release of information turns justice into a tool of control, not accountability. Legal barriers, defamation risk, statutes of limitations, lack of evidence can prevent prosecutions even when names emerge. But justice is more than court verdicts. It demands recognition, moral responsibility, and systemic reform. Survivors reclaiming their voice by compiling their own lists is courageous but fraught with risk. The fact that survivors must do this themselves indicts the entire system. This is not just an Epstein story. It is a microcosm of how power, secrecy, wealth, and law often conspire to block justice. We rely on brave survivors, whistleblowers, and persistent journalism to bring light because institutions too often choose darkness. If you watch this and say nothing, silence protects the powerful. Share this video, let more people know survivors are fighting for truth. The names may be hidden, the documents redacted, but your pressure matters. Hit like, comment, demand transparency. Don't let this die in the dark. If we don't hold institutions accountable, we become enablers too. Subscribe, stay notified, and keep demanding justice because it isn't passive. Every time someone whispers, "Not our concern," a survivor's struggle grows quieter. Leave a comment, engage, speak their names, don't let them vanish behind redactions.